Welcome everyone, good afternoon. This is the second webinar in the series brought to you by Women's Business Development Center. Today, we are partnering with them via our Business Services Collective. This is a rough timeline of our time today with you for the next hour. We've requested you to complete a survey as you came in. Just helps us understand who's in the audience. Today's agenda is we're going to give you the context of this webinar, and again, thank the city for making this happen. We really are focusing on the concept of financial health for nonprofits. That's what the key takeaway hopefully for today is, and we are doing it through the lens of these three buckets we call plan, manage, and fund, for you as a nonprofit to be able to plan, manage, and fund. Halfway through the presentation, you will be going through an assessment, a financial health assessment for your nonprofit. By no means is it a test for your organization, or it is, we understand that some of you may not come prepared with that kind of information to take the assessment. It is just a way to help you get, put the concepts we are going to be sharing with you in practice and be able to see your organization through that lens. It'll not be a perfect assessment. And so we'll actually encourage you to retake the assessment later, and how that will actually shape the follow-up session and the further assistance to be offered to you is what we will discuss in next steps. With that, I want to welcome Clark McCain from Women's Business Development Center to give us the context of why we are here, and also thank him for the opportunity to for choosing Business Services Collective as a partner to do this with you.
Thanks, Nitika. Welcome, everyone. And we're thrilled that everyone's here and that Business Service Collective can share their wisdom with us. My name is Clark McCain. I'm the Managing Director of Strategic Partnerships at the Women's Business Development Center. That's a nonprofit organization that has been contracted by the city of Chicago to be part of the nonprofit capacity building program that is offering these variety of educational opportunities, and we're thrilled that you're participating in one of those today. So the city of Chicago is embarking on an effort called the Chicago Recovery Plan, which is an opportunity that will make available significant dollars through grant programs available to nonprofits. And that's what this endeavor is all about, helping organizations to better understand those opportunities and prepare for them. The Women's Business Development Center has been, as I said, contracted to be part of this effort. And we're an organization that historically has helped business organizations, for-profits, individuals who want to start businesses or grow them, to be able to do that effectively. And we have a department that's dedicated to helping business owners gain skills to be successful in entering contracts with government organizations. So we do this with for-profit organizations as a regular course of our business, and we're now being able to, because of this program, assist nonprofits as well. So there are many grants that will be becoming available through the city and other municipal entities. And we're all here to prepare for those, to better understand how we can respond. And this program will provide support to nonprofit organizations that have been impacted by COVID-19 over the prior years, primarily organizations that are serving low and moderate income communities, and pointedly, primarily organizations with budgets of under $1 million, although that's not an exclusive core set of beneficiary organizations. So we're thrilled that Business Services Collective can share their wisdom. This is a wonderful organization that has personal experience in the types of topics that we're going to explore, and a method that is really valuable to consider. So thank you for being part of this, and we look forward to what we learned today. Thanks, Nitika.
Thank you, Clark. And as you were sharing who you are, I realized I never shared who I am. So I am Nitika Nautiyal, co-founder of Business Services Collective. I'm also the Chief Strategy and Development Officer. So I do our fundraising, and a lot of our fundraising happens through partnerships. So I lead our partnerships as well. Ms. Clark, thank you for giving the context and purpose of this webinar today. At the end of today, what we would like to accomplish and how we define success for those of you who are attending is if you can walk away with an understanding of the financial health framework, if you can take the assessment on behalf of your organization, and hopefully that inspires you to schedule a follow-up with one of our team members, because the assessment is only as helpful as the session after that. As we said, it's not a test on your organization's financial health, but it really puts the concepts into practice. And it is just a piece of paper if you don't have the follow-up session after that. So I hope that what you learn here today inspires you to do that. So let me give you a little bit of background on Business Services Collective. We are about a 4-year-old nonprofit working within the economic development space. My co-founder, Kyle Johnson, and I have about more than a decade and a half experience in economic development. We call ourselves recovering loan officers. We used to work for CDFI, now called Allies for Community Business, but when we joined it was Axion. And our experience has been in working with BIPOC entrepreneurs, but through Business Services Collective, we primarily offer them back office support services for them to be financially healthy businesses. And our work is primarily around, we are great listeners. We listen to our partners, we listen to the businesses who we are working with, and together with our partners who are other BSOs, we come up with services that we offer to kind of provide end-to-end solutions to the businesses we are working with. Our model, BSC, what BSC brings to these partnerships is primarily a matchmaking model where we partner with service providers who are also businesses of color. So these can be bookkeepers, accountants, tax preparers, payroll providers, project managers, who we then connect with subcontractors or contractors of color. And these services are paid for by BSC through the money we raise from philanthropy. So businesses do not pay anything for these services, at least in the beginning, until they really start seeing value from it and see that are in a position to pay. We pivoted to the financial health framework. We've adopted it from another Chicago-based organization called Financial Health Network, who's done tremendous work in the space of financial health and well-being, primarily focused on financial health and well-being of individuals, but they also developed this framework, which we found very helpful for small business financial health. And that's what we are really going to be talking about today. And it primarily defines financial health as a business's ability through daily systems, which gives it the capacity to sustain shocks and be able to pursue opportunities. And we'll talk about what that means through examples of businesses we've served. And for that, I'll hand over to my co-founder and Chief Operating Officer for BSC, Kyle Johnson.
Thanks, Nitika. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So I want to kind of illustrate through an example of one of our construction entrepreneurs, how we've used the financial health framework to help them plan, manage, and fund their business. And as Nitika said, position them to be able to weather dry spells and jump on opportunities as they come up. So one of the contractors I worked with last year, his name's Ulysses. He came up as a carpenter. He had started his business a few years ago, and he described being stuck in what we call the contractor cycle, which is constantly being flooded with requests for quotes and estimates from customers, while he's also trying to manage the job site, make sure his crew shows up every day, make sure they have the materials they need, moving from that job site to the next job site, while also following up with customers to make sure he gets paid, making sure he's keeping money in the bank account to keep his workers paid on time, his materials paid on time, all while finding time to respond to all those requests for quotes from customers, right? And trying to set up his next week of work. And so that contractor cycle, has him feeling very reactive, and the financial health framework is something we did to help him be in position to be proactive. So we helped him better plan for the business by showing him how to prepare bids and quotes for customers using software, which would save him time and create a more detailed bid where he's actually planning out how much material and labor he needs while he's providing the quote. We helped him manage the day-to-day finances of the business by connecting him to a local accountant who trained him and one of his team members on how to maintain QuickBooks for his daily financials, and put him in a position to actually see what types of construction projects are we making money on, what types of projects are we losing money on, and being able to use that information in real time to adapt and pursue the types of construction projects where they're making money and avoid the ones where they're consistently losing money. And then we use those up-to-date financials to help him fund the business by applying for a line of credit at a local CDFI, which helps him front fund his projects. It helps him float that wait time in between projects. And you can start to see now how holistically that plan, manage, fund kind of play off together. Whereas before, that cycle was causing him to always be reactive. He's now in a position to be proactive, where he has a line of credit to be able to weather dry spells in the construction cycle, and he has a very efficient way of using that time to get out bids in a targeted way. He's also in a position to jump on opportunities. So he now has the wiggle room that when an ideal opportunity comes up, he's got a system and a team in place and the access to capital he needs to be able to submit a competitive bid within the due date, knowing he's got the resources in talent and capital to pursue that opportunity. And when for us, part of this translation from, working with construction business owners to sharing our experience with you all is when we talk about that contractor cycle of constantly trying to win the work and then also trying to manage the work. It might sound a little bit like your experience as a nonprofit, where you're constantly trying to win the grants to fund the programming. At the same time, you're trying to manage the programs on a day-to-day basis, capture outcomes from those programs, and get those submitted in the next round of grant proposals. So Nitika, if you go to the next slide, we're going to spend a bit of time talking about federal grant opportunities, but before we dive into that, I want to give a brief overview of the different types of revenue that are available for nonprofits and how they can be lean on different strengths of the organization. And I'll use Business Services Collective as an example. So on the left-hand side are maybe the more familiar types of funding, where it's somebody giving us money to benefit somebody else, right? So these look like individual donations for BSC. We've got some of our board members that make a small annual contribution. We've had some individuals also donate through our website. We've also get a lot of grants from regional foundations, where we submit a grant application and they provide a chunk of money to fund a 6 or 12-month program. On the right-hand side are some other types of funding that I want to point out. One is earned income. And so this is where we're receiving money from the person who is benefiting from the service. So this could look like, in the case of BSC, we've had a few contractors who are in a position to be able to pay for the cost of support that we provide, where they paid directly and then they receive that accounting help or that estimating help. We've also actually used this model to contract with a larger nonprofit, where that large nonprofit, they got a grant to provide a program, and then they made us sign a subcontract where we provided the programming to clients and then charged the nonprofit, where they paid us as a contractor, basically, right? So even in that model, while they're not the beneficiaries of the nonprofit service we're providing, they're getting their contract needs met. And so they're, again, paying directly for a service to fulfill one of their obligations. Another source of capital here in the other category could be, we applied for a line of credit. We actually started the application about 1.5 years ago. It's still in progress. But that experience of applying for a line of credit is something we did to develop our own resiliency to weather dry spells. And that application looked a lot more like applying for a loan as a small business owner or a homeowner or a car driver, rather than applying for a grant application, right? So I just want to illustrate how these different sources have different different processes for securing the capital. If you go to the next slide, Nitika, I'll now dive into the federal grants. What makes a federal grant or other government grant funding unique? What are the opportunities and challenges to consider? So, the main item with government grants is it's typically a very large dollar amount, right? It's probably the largest dollar amount of funding that maybe any of us as a nonprofit would ever have the opportunity to secure. With that large dollar amount, it also comes a lot of barriers, and these are typically the most competitive type of applications where it's a very public, you may be competing against hundreds or even thousands of other nonprofits. And there's also a level of anonymity where in a more local sense with individual donors or regional foundations, you might be able to build a relationship with somebody and get to know them, and they'll get to know your organization. They can kind of create space for you within their foundation. With a government grant, there's really not that opportunity. You are submitting the application as written with limited assistance or kind of relationship support from the government agency. What are the opportunities with government grants is, they are large dollar amounts. They're also often multi-year contracts. Which means that if you have a program that's working really well, you can lock in this funding and run your program for the next 3 to 5 years with minimal amount of additional fundraising required. The flip side of that is that when you put in your initial application, you might get locked into delivering on that, right? So even as your program evolves over time and you have a lot of lessons learned and innovations, you may not be able to fully apply those in this government grant because of what you put in that initial grant application. Another item I'd bring up is that federal grants often pay in arrears, or they're reimbursing you for programs already delivered. So even as they give you this large chunk of money to deliver a large amount of programming, you may have to front fund your trainers, your staff members, your program materials, and other program expenses, and then submit an invoice to the government and wait to get paid 3 to 6 months after that programming's been delivered. And how you're going to front fund that is a challenge outside of the actual grant application. So if we can go to the next slide, Nitika, I'll walk through an example again of BSC's experience applying for a federal grant. We were not successful, but we did learn a lot along the way that we want to share with everyone today. So we were part of the Clean Tech Coalition for Illinois back in 2021. This was a coalition of 40 nonprofits who were applying for a $100 million multi-year grant through the EDA, a federal agency that was trying to create economic clusters in cities across the US. So we started that application in September of 2021. You can imagine with 40 nonprofits all trying to coalesce around a single grant application, kind of the logistical work involved with getting a clear narrative and getting a consistent story and a strong application that represents 40 different nonprofits. There are also multiple rounds. So we had a phase 1 of just getting through kind of the Illinois semifinalists. And then we advanced to the national round where we had a much larger application, had to revisit all of those questions. And in addition to the narrative challenge of just putting together a compelling application, there were also a lot of what I would call regulatory requirements. So as the COO of our organization, I had to go on to sam.gov and login.gov and create, get a DUNS number and get a sam.gov number and create a login at longa.gov to be able to get the SAM number. And there was a lot of, just a lot of steps with that I frankly had a hard time getting through. It took me a few full days just to get some of these numbers that we needed to add in the application. And as I hinted at before, there was very limited support from the government agency and how to walk through these registrations. So we were kind of figuring it out ourselves. I then turned around and tried to show some of the other coalition members how to get through these registrations. And then we got that application submitted in March of 2020. So it took about 6 months of time from initial concept, building the coalition and the applications. The government did offer a small, what they called technical assistance grant, acknowledging that we were small nonprofits with limited capacity to apply for this grant. We were able to receive $10,000 to help cover the significant staff time that we had spent on this application, even though we weren't successful. We received that $10,000 in August of 2022, about 6 months after we had submitted the application. after, we had to submit payroll reports and prove that we had spent this time on the application. And so I would say, while I'm really grateful for that $10,000 grant, I don't feel it delivered on the vision of enabling small nonprofits to give them the capacity to apply. It was sort of recognition of the capacity after we had done all that work, right? So I want to pause there and ask Nitika, who led our coalition work, if there's anything you wanted to add about that story with this specific federal grant.
Thank you, Kyle. I think one of the lessons was how much longer it took. So it always takes you longer, even though we knew early on that it was a year-long process. Internally, galvanizing around it, and we were a coalition within the coalition. So we were a partnership of which we were already working together, and yet the amount of time it took to put together all the pieces was much more than we had anticipated. At times, we also felt like we were so overwhelmed with the process that we lost sight of the purpose. The reason we had formed this smaller coalition to do this together was because we wanted to scale our model. And in putting together the application and just getting through the paperwork, we hardly spoke about how the model will scale, because we were so overwhelmed just trying to be on time with getting all our information together. So that was a huge learning of like how that should not happen. And then lastly, how we were not, even if it's almost like, it seems like now a blessing in disguise that the grant didn't come through, because to receive that kind of money and to not have the systems in place for that, I think would have done us more harm than good. So we look at this opportunity that maybe the $10,000 were not enough, but boy, the lessons which came with this opportunity have been great for us. And we feel so encouraged by what the city is doing through organizations like WBDC and others, that it's almost like stopping the rest of us from making those mistakes by learning about government grants, by learning about the complications involved, and getting us all ready. So this is a great opportunity, and I'm grateful as a nonprofit and for the space that this kind of stuff is now available, because you don't want to spend a year to learn all these lessons. So it's so I again want to thank the city for doing this. So with that, I'll actually want to invite my Trina and Tamara from our team, who also leads a nonprofit consulting organization called Lavender Eucalyptus, and has done capacity building work for nonprofits across the country. So I invite Trina to share about how the financial health framework that we've applied for the businesses we work with and we've used upon ourselves as a nonprofit can actually also be applied to nonprofits. Trina?
Thank you, Nitika. And first, let me just say, it is so good to be fully present with you all. Just a little bit about Lavender Eucalyptus, really quickly. Just like the herbs, the mission is to soothe the operational pain points and capacity constraints many nonprofits face on a day-to-day basis. And as Nitika alluded to, I have worked with and within companies that range in size from local community-based businesses to national nonprofits and multinational billion-dollar institutions. And with each organization, I focused on delivering high-quality results in operations, project management, and service delivery. And similar to what Kyle shared with you earlier about what planning, managing, and funding looks like for businesses, nonprofits can also group a lot of their activities within these focus areas. For nonprofits, the plan category is focused on the organization's ability to create and implement effective financial plans, systems, and processes that could help them achieve their goals. The managed category is focused on the understanding and implementation of financial management best practices that strengthen its ability to meet both short and long-term obligations while effectively delivering programming and efficiently running the operations. And the final category, the fund category, focuses on the ability to diversify funding sources and increase the reliability of the funds to be received. Okay, so to better illustrate this, I want to share with you some work that I've done with a nonprofit in the plan and manage categories. For context, the nonprofit has a national geographic footprint and generates an annual revenue of $4 million through a mix of corporate, local, state, and now federal funding, as well as earned income from consulting services. The organization is fiscally sponsored, but the nonprofit's ability to effectively and quickly and strategically plan at the nonprofit level was hampered due to timing differences, where, for instance, the executive director and the development team would know about the funds that were verbally guaranteed. However, because those funds had not been received in hand by the fiscal sponsor or an agreement had been codified, those funds could not be added to the system and tracked. As a result, it caused a lot of hiccups. For instance, there were many times, well, in addition, there were many times when the program teams realized that funds were either underspent or overspent at the funding end date. And then lastly, internally, the nonprofit had a patchwork of processes and systems in place. So to strengthen the plan activities, I worked with the nonprofit to create an internal financial tracker that integrated each of the funding streams, both actual and anticipated, at the organization and individual program levels. To strengthen the managed activities, I work with the organization to map out all of their day-to-day activities to budgets from each funding source and revise the financial standard operating procedures around the periodic budget reviews. Together, these actions better position the team members to see and adjust spending patterns in near real time, understand current levels of cash on hand, and assess overall funding needs. This example not only shows what plan and manage activities look like for a particular nonprofit, but it also shows how the activities within the categories overlap and work with one another. So now you have an opportunity to see how your nonprofit is performing in each of these areas of plan, manage, and fund. I am going to drop the link to the assessment in the chat for you. And so when you log in, go to the survey, scroll down into your name, the name of your organization, and your email address to begin. And then upon completion, and just to let you know, it's only 2 or 3 minutes long, so it doesn't take that long. And upon completion, you will see the results, which will also be emailed to you along with the report itself. Also, for those of you who are still in the very early stages or even the planning stages of your nonprofit, you can still take this survey. Just go in and select no for most of the questions. But then when you get to the question that is asking for a qualitative response, basically asking you for additional information, just write in something there related to the initial financial considerations and concerns you might have around launching. The survey results and report will provide helpful, actionable suggestions for everyone, regardless of the stage you're in. And with that.
Yep. Thank you, Trina. So we've put the link for the financial health assessment in the chat. We'll give you about 3 to 4 minutes to complete it. As people are completing it, if you can just give us up a thumbs up as your emoji, we'll know you're done. Please know this is the reason we are asking for a name and email is so that you get a copy of the report and not that we are going to assess you on this. This is for you to be able to apply the principles you heard about today and how they will appear. We understand you may not have this information handy, and that's why we encourage you to go back, talk to your financial team, and retake it. But today, it's almost like a takeaway for you from this webinar could be a better understanding of financial health framework. So we'll give you about 3 minutes to complete it. And if you're done earlier, please raise your hand or send me a signal that you're done so that I know and we can move on. Thank you. Another 2 minutes. It is completely okay if your answers are, I don't know. It is not a test. I will repeat. Thank you, June. She said she's done with the assessment. We didn't see other hands up or thumbs up or any other indication. So maybe just another minute and 12:40, we can restart.
Wayne and Marky and
Okay.
Sharon are all done as well.
Excellent.
Bertina.
Thank you for letting us know. And this can stay with you if you want to leave the screen open and come back to it or keep taking it. That is also a possibility. It's 12:40, so I will ask Trina to help us understand what, though for those of you who've taken it, the score may appear within the plan managed fund categories as low, medium, high. She'll help us understand what that means generically. Please know that we do not have the time to individually help you understand what that score means for your organization during this webinar. That is the purpose of the follow-up, and we highly, highly encourage you to do that. But for now, Trina, could you help us understand what those scores mean in those categories?
Yes, happy to do so. So I'm glad to see that everyone has completed the survey. Like Nitika mentioned, if you leave it on your browser, it will stay open. But then also, if you do not have a chance to finish it, or you want to go take a look at your numbers, your operations, and come back and do it, you could do so. You will receive two different types of emails. One, if it's incomplete, then you can just pick up and go back to finish it. The other one is for completion. If you had not already received the notification from your email account, it will be there waiting for you. And in that email, you'll have two different links. One is to the results that you saw as soon as you completed the survey. The second link is to a report that provides a bit more information on ways that you can improve your nonprofit's financial health in each of the categories. And so with that said, the slide that you're looking at right now is a general overview of what it means if you scored anywhere between low and high in any one of those categories. It's very general. As Nitika shared with you. The specificity comes in the follow-up steps, which Nitika will share with you momentarily. Going back to the score here, each category was scored on a scale from 0 to 100%. And this slide digs deeper into what that means. In general, I want to share that the major takeaway is that this survey and your results capture your nonprofit's current situation. And there's beauty in that, because what that means is that there are always opportunities for improvement, and you can come back and continue to gauge where you are based on this. In general, there are several steps that a nonprofit can take and can continue to take to strengthen its planning, managing, and funding activities. And with that, I turn it over to Nitika, who will share how this relates to government funding.
Thank you, Trina. So what we tried to do today was introduce the concept of financial health through the lens of how it works for BSC as we serve our businesses. We gave you examples and then talked about our experience as a nonprofit, applying this concept, applying our experience as an applicant for a government grant, our learnings from there, and then the financial health framework through a nonprofit lens. You took the assessment and you're wondering what that score means. And we promise you there is a lot of resources in store for you as in the follow-up action. The key question also here is a government grant a right fit for your nonprofit? And there is always, everything we say here is with the caveat, it depends. But in general, if you think about 3 buckets of when it is a good fit, when it is not a good fit, and when it's a maybe, we would say it is a good fit when there is adequate capacity. And people usually think of capacity in terms of people or personnel. We also want to introduce the idea of systems also as capacity, as well as financial capacity. Please understand all government grants work on a reimbursement basis. And so while you're waiting for the reimbursement, you have expenses, you need capacity to be able to float. Either comes in the form of grants or other grants that you have, which can help you float, or working capital loans or line of credit or cash reserves. But that financial capacity is known to what can make or break your nonprofit if you are a government grantee. It is not a good fit for you when you don't have these capacities, but that doesn't mean it's never going to be a good fit for you. It's not a good fit for you now, but let's help you build that capacity. Let's help you strengthen your financial systems, those financial management practices or systems, or help access sources of capital even for nonprofits. And that's where resources like today's webinar, that's the purpose, is help nonprofit build capacity for nonprofits who are not ready right now. And when it's a maybe, it basically means you need to ask more questions. You need to ask more questions internally of yourself as a nonprofit, as well as for the grant opportunity itself. On paper, it may seem a good opportunity, but let's ask those who've been helped or who've been granted by that government agency in the past, or others who are considering to apply, and let's just get more informed of that opportunity before we apply. With that, I do want to, something I'm hoping all of you are curious about. We are excited to share about the next steps post this assessment. We encourage you to review the assessment if you've completed it. If you've not completed it, please go ahead and complete it. As Trina said, you can, unless you get out of the browser, you will have access to it. So complete the assessment. You'll get it as a PDF in your email. Take the time to review it yourself and with your team. And you will, as we shared, you may not have had all the information to take the assessment in the first place. So that is, this assessment only means as much. We then encourage you to better inform yourself, your financial team, and then retake the assessment. And if you feel that the assessment, you had enough information and the assessment stands, then we encourage you to schedule a follow-up. We will put a link for scheduling the follow-up in the chat towards the end of the presentation. The follow-up is essentially a diagnosis, right? This is what your score is. This is what it means. These are the steps you can do to help. That help itself comes as one-on-one advisory support, which is also something that in our partnership with WBDC, we're able to offer you, but not just WBDC, there are other nonprofits through this program that are also willing to offer help, and WBDC can be your concierge to guide you towards those resources. And last but not the least, in April, we are coming back in partnership with WBDC to offer another webinar, which is about budgeting and pricing your services. If this format worked for you, if this piqued your interest, that could be another resource that can be helpful for your organization. Not just for a government grant, by the way, for any grant, you should know how to price your services. That's something nonprofits do not do well, because we want to help everybody and we want to make everything free. And trust me, there are folks who can pay for your services. You just have to figure out what that sliding scale is. With that, Clark, do you want to share about the other resources that the city has made available and other things that WBDC is offering that we can share with the attendees?
Thanks, Nitika, Kyle, and Trina, for a really fascinating overview and a peek into some additional resources and thinking that all of us can act on and employ as we consider this journey towards government grants and contracts. And this session today sits within a large program the City of Chicago is making available, and it has multiple different elements. So there is, first of all, a summit that will be taking place on March 9th, and that will be a large-scale event that will enable you to learn more about this program and the various different elements that are available to you through it. So we'd suggest that you consider attending the Readiness Summit, the first one that's going to take place. There will be additional summits in coming months, all really good educational offerings for you. Additionally, as is the case with this particular event, there are webinars on other topics that are offered on a variety of different topics over coming weeks and months. And additionally, small group workshops each week we at the WBDC offer a small group workshop, which is an opportunity, and I know some of you have participated in this already, to gather together with a staff counselor from the WBDC and with colleagues from other nonprofits across town to really look at a current City of Chicago grant opportunity and walk through that application to get a feel for what an application looks like. What are the components of a grant request? What are the things that you would need to provide in a response or in a proposal? And so it's a live example of walking through something like that. And then, Q&A that's open for you to raise topics of your personal and individual interest for discussion. And then additionally, as Nitika was mentioning, very importantly, there's the opportunity to access one-on-one counseling and support. And so that is available to you for questions that you might have related to a contract opportunity or a grant, or it may be something very specific to today's experience in today's webinar that you want to explore. So these counseling opportunities and everything else I've described is all available at no cost to your organization, but made available through this particular program. So the location you need to, how you need to sign up for these things is the exact same way that you signed up for this webinar. So there's a link on the City of Chicago's website that that communicates these various opportunities, and that will be available to you to register for these various different forms of support. Just a little heads up, this morning there were some IT issues with that form, that intake form, but keep at it, and that will be up and available to you here in the future. So those are the great opportunities that are available. And Nitika, can I turn it back over to you for closing our session?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Clark. As Clark pointed out to those resources, here are additional resources for Business Services Collective, the emails for the three of us, if you want to get in touch with any one of us. Women's Business Development Center is offering these monthly webinars, weekly small group workshops, and then the one-on-one application assistance. And the City of Chicago has this huge portal that has a lot of information that's helpful. But in the chat, I've put the exact link, which is the link, as Clark pointed out, that helped you sign up for this event. But it'll also help you sign up for the one-on-one follow-up sessions on your assessment. And those are different from the one-on-one assistance. The one-on-one assistance can go beyond the 30 to 60 minutes. that will be a follow-up on your assessment today. So with that, Clark, Kyle, Trina, and I really want to thank you for this opportunity to partnering with BSC. We really want to thank City of Chicago. This is a tremendous resource for small nonprofits. We've been there, we've experienced it, and we wish something like this existed when we were struggling. So thank you to the city for doing this. Thank you to WBDC for partnering with us. And we are here for the next 7 minutes.